Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to be talking about 5 horror movies that scared the crap out of me as a child growing up. When I mean child, I literally mean age between 5 and say 12 years old. Yes, I was far too young to be watching any of these movies on today's list, but we've all done it, guys, haven't we? But before we do get started then, if this is your first time here, please do not forget to hit that like, share and subscribe button because it really helps us out on the channel. Coming in at number 5 is Creepshow, and I can't remember specifically how old I was when I saw this, but I was very, very young. Now, Creepshow is a 1982 horror fantasy movie that has 5 separate short horror stories ranging from a zombie bursting out of a grave to a man being attacked by millions of horrible cockroaches. But for me, the scariest moment that really terrified me was the crate, which I used to call the monster in the box. I've actually done a full movie review on this, which you can check out just here somewhere on the screen, but watching this movie back as an adult isn't as scary as watching it as a young child, but the crate, story, it just terrified me. I used to be terrified of a Jack in the Box, those horrible poppy out toys, and I have a feeling that this is why I was so scared of the crate segment in the movie. I knew there was something terrifying inside this box, and I was even more terrified by the fact that, it's probably going to jump out at any moment and you just don't know when. Even by today's standards, this part of the movie is quite intense and quite jumpy, so it's no surprise why I was scared of the monster in the box. Thankfully, as I've gotten older, I absolutely have the best time with this movie, and it no longer gives me the creeps. At number 4, and we have It, the original 1990 version. I think I was around 10 or 11 years old when I saw this movie. In fact, this isn't even a movie that either of my parents owned in the house. It was one of the other kids living on my street. We ended up watching it at my friend's house one Sunday afternoon when the weather was awful. I can remember it very, very well. And all I knew about this film was it was about some scary clown, and boy, is it just that. The idea of a killer clown living in the drains killing children was probably not the best movie to watch as a child, but at the same time, I probably watched it when it was probably going to scare me the most, so bit of a double-edged sword there. I mean, that's what a horror film is supposed to do. There isn't really any specific moment that scared the crap out of me, but what always stuck in my mind for a very long time was the opening kill scene with Georgie, and every time Pennywise would open his mouth and reveal his demonic teeth, getting ready to eat one of the children, I was always really creeped out by it. I was always scared of drains and the bathroom sink for a very long time after watching this. Thankfully now, this movie doesn't scare me as much as an adult, but I do always prefer the original It to the remake. At number 3, and we've got Candyman, once again the original that came out in 1992. We all knew that old wives' tale, Bloody Mary, when you're growing up and you say Bloody Mary 3, or was it 5 times? I'm not entirely sure, but you say it in front of a mirror and then Bloody Mary comes to get you. Well, Candyman is just that, only scarier in my opinion. I can remember hearing about Candyman and all of us children in school, all of my friends, we were just talking about it, but none of us had actually physically seen it. I mean, 1992, I would have been 5 years old. So it was probably around about 1993 when I first had the experience of trying to watch this, because I think it was just premiering on like Sky Box Office or whatever it was back then, somewhere along those lines, and my older sister wanted to rent and watch it. Now, from the best of my memory, I think my sister tried to get me to go to bed thinking that the film would just be way too much for me, but at the same time, I don't think my sister wanted to watch it on her own, so she didn't try that hard to send me to bed. So I ended up sticking around and being the brave 6-year-old. I got as far as the first 5 minutes until I ended up running out of the living room and running upstairs and climbing into bed, absolutely terrified. I didn't even get to watch the whole film, just the opening scene. In the opening scene, there is a couple who end up playing Candyman in the mirror, and the girlfriend, she ends up saying Candyman's name one final time, and then she turns the lights off, and then, heaven behold, Candyman pops up behind her, and then the boyfriend, he's like sitting downstairs, and then he sees blood dripping through the ceiling. That was far, far too much for a 6-year-old boy like me. I actually didn't watch this movie in its whole form until I was around about a teenager, maybe 13 or 14, where I now, completely appreciate this movie a lot more because it is an absolutely amazing piece of horror, and I definitely need to review it on this channel very soon. On that subject, let me know in the comments box below what horror movies you would like to see me review on the channel. Just missing out on the top spot now is Halloween. I mean, no youngster should be watching Halloween, but I did. And I can even remember sitting on my dad's lap when I watched this film. I was really young. Again, maybe 5, 6, or even 7 years old, and because I was that young, I remember falling asleep, on my dad's lap in between the monologue talking parts, but I did wake up for the scary bits, and I was always really, really scared of Michael Myers and his really heavy breathing sound that he makes in his mask. That sound stuck with me for quite some time. His white mask also really freaked me out, especially the scene where Laurie Strode is, she sees him from the bedroom window, blended in with that white, washing on the washing line. But I think the most scariest thing for me as a child was the whole chase sequence in the final act. I think the feeling of not being able to get away from a monster and having nobody around to help you really is a child's worst nightmare, and it honestly really, really did terrify me, and this film did give me a few nightmares over the years after watching it. And even when I was a teenager, I couldn't really watch Halloween on my own. I don't know what it was, but yeah, I just couldn't. I had to have somebody home with me for me to at least watch it. I mean, that is how amazing this horror film is, so well done, John Carpenter. At my number 1 spot is A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I am actually speaking specifically about A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 because I think that was the first one that I saw as a very young child growing up, and I tell you what, I should not have been watching this one because this movie absolutely traumatized me. The opening scene with the bus howling and growling still sends my blood cold. Now, I never thought that a bus could be so scary, but it really, really is in this movie. Also, Freddy Krueger is just every kid's worst nightmare, and not only that, this is definitely one of the darker versions of Freddy before they made him into a jokey one-liner in the later sequels. So I went hardcore on this one as a youngster. Also, the part where Freddy comes out of Jesse's body is just pure nightmare feel, even watching this as an adult. When I say that Freddy Krueger gave me literal night terrors as a child, I ain't even lying. It's crazy looking back now at how terrified I was of Freddy because, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are my favorite now of all time. Out of any horror film, Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare films are my number 1. I can remember my parents actually had A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 on VHS videotape, and even the cover of this videotape scared the crap out of me. I'd have to make sure that the tape was turned around whenever I was going into the video cupboard because I always felt that Freddy was watching me. It was terrifying. The Nightmare films are not made for children, and even though I almost ended up having therapy as a child after seeing them, I still had a good time, and I wouldn't change anything for the world. Well, we have reached the end of my list, but now I really want to hear some of your childhood memories and experiences with horror. Are there any horror films that you watched when you were far too young as a child that absolutely scared the pants off you? Let me know. Let me know everything in the comments box below, as I will love to hear your stories. Okay then guys, thank you all for watching today's video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very, very soon.